Is this really the millennial parenting whisperer's guide to parenting? Or is this some fluff around social media feel-good parenting? Today we are looking at the book Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kenedy and really breaking down what the book is about, whether it's a good fit for your family, and what we can learn and take away from this book. If you're new here, this book is part of a series that we are doing at the moment on 25 of the most commonly recommended parenting resources, from books to research papers, for this generation of parents. And of course, Good Inside is definitely one of those. It is very well recommended at the moment, and it is a pretty new book. And of course, Dr. Becky and her book, Good Inside, is one of those resources. I listen to Good Inside on Audible. It's amazing as a parent to be able to have books in this kind of format. And I would say that this book is definitely one that is good for listening to on an audio format. You basically can buy the book, download the app, and listen to it as you are.
In each case, that disappointment or the
And you can listen to it on the go, whether you are washing dishes or driving. It's really handy to have it like that. I'll leave a link to come and join Audible below. They have a membership, which I really like. So you get a point, you pay like monthly, and then you get a point and you can access whatever book you want. There are also a lot of books that are part of the membership, meaning you get them in your membership for free. So you can use your points to purchase a book, but then you can also buy a book for free. So there's a lot of actually really great parenting books and other books that are part of that package, and they do like kind of change them up every now and again. So go and check that link out below as well to sign up for Audible if you are looking to listen to books on the go. So Dr. Becky Kenedy is the author of this book. You may know her from her very popular Instagram page as well as podcast. So she is a psychologist. The story of how Dr. Becky's Instagram page came to be is actually pretty interesting. She had planned to launch a business around a bedtime clock that uses the voice of a parent to kind of calm the child in that separation. And she had created a lot of content around the role of a parent and about gentle parenting and her practices in terms of parenting in order to support the launch of this clock. In the end, they didn't launch the clock. It turned out that it would be too expensive to manufacture, and it just wasn't a good product for them to go with. But she did decide to use all of the content that she'd already planned and launch that in terms of an Instagram page, and then later a podcast. Now she has a membership, courses, the book, and various other things. So that's the kind of backstory of the business. Dr. Becky herself is a licensed psychologist. She practiced with adults, which I think is a really important point to kind of understand. And so she is coming towards parenting and towards writing a parenting book from the lens of what she sees in her practice in terms of adults. So if we look at the key takeaway points and the main learnings of the book, it is based on this concept or her belief that parenting on a compliance model, or a parenting around just wanting obedience from our children, conditions them towards negative thought patterns. So she talks about how, you would never ask a parent, like, what do you want for your child when they're 30 years old? And that they would say that they would be obedient. But we practice this way with our young children, and actually it conditions our children to a lot of the things that we wouldn't want them to carry through to adulthood, like a cycle of shame as well as codependency. So the book is basically broken into two sections. The first section is called Dr. Becky's Parenting Principles. And in here she covers principles like her belief that we are good inside, that what is in us is always good, and that when we respond negatively, it's not because we're not good, but because something has been too challenging for us or the environment was too hard. Another one is that two things are true. This is one that she's very famous for, and it's shared a lot on social media, that you can feel you can love someone and be angry with them. You can want to do something and also feel frustrated while doing it. So this kind of belief that two things can be true at the same time, even if they seem like they are opposing viewpoints. And then another one is that behavior is a window, that when children are showing like behavior or bad behavior, it's often a window into some kind of psychological process that's going on. So she goes through 10 of these points. Those are just 3 of them. And then the second part of the book is what she calls building connection and addressing behavior. So this book, this part of the book really focuses on actual strategies. She goes through lots of things like situations that you might have with your child, difficulty around eating or feeding or dinner time, difficulty around perfectionism, and many different areas that are common struggles for parenting. In the second part of the book, she does use a lot of practical tools, which I have to say I really did enjoy. So she talks a lot in chapter 11 specifically. I think out of all the whole book, chapter 11 is definitely for me the most meaningful, and it was just a really good reminder for me personally. So she talks there about building relationship capital, and that when our relationship with our children is stronger, it's natural that they will listen to us more, that they will feel stronger in their coping skills in like school and outside situations. So she talks a lot about building relationship capital, and how, I think she uses the analogy of a cup or maybe a bucket, but how like if it's full, if the battery is full of relationship capital, or a bank account, yeah, of course she uses bank account. So if the bank account is full of relationship capital, then when we have to pull out from that relationship capital for like, giving instructions on things that our children need to do, or if there's any points of friction, that at least the capital is full. This is like a concept that is actually talked about in many, many parenting resources as well as relationship resources. This idea that if we are having more positive interactions, then the negative interactions will be a little bit softer, because there is that like bank account already full. So some of the ideas that she gives here, which I really enjoyed, were things like filling your children up with hugs. So giving them lots and lots of hugs and filling them up. She talks about this idea we've actually used it a lot in our house this week after listening to the book. She says like, all I'm saying is that when I open my eyes, I'm going to close my eyes now. When I open my eyes, if there's two children standing here with shoes on, I might just have to do a silly dance. So she brings in a lot of these like concepts of playful parenting, and like just communicating with children in their actual language of play and of silliness and of lightheartedness, instead of it just being like do, which is really fun. And I think like something like this, like a tool, all I'm saying, it's very easy to grab and use immediately without much huge thoughts or like a list that we have to remember. It's a really great tool to have. Another one that she talks about a lot is like relaying stories. This is well supported in research, relaying stories of our own childhood or even our own experience of the world currently as parents, and relaying that to our children when they are facing similar things, like talking to our children about a time that you had to do something that you didn't want to do, or a time that you were really tired and you had to keep going, whether it was a race or a work project, whatever it was, but relaying these stories and how that helps our children like also understand the world more. So let's talk a little bit about some of the discourse or opposing views about the concept that she brings up within the book. I think in every kind of parenting resource that we read, I know this for myself, sometimes we can read something that has like quick tips, and those tips are so helpful. But when we are talking about like, especially what she talks about in the first part of the book, the first 10 chapters, her kind of philosophy on parenting, I think it's really important that we have a really clear idea of whether this fits for us or doesn't, because it can get really confusing. This life that we live at the moment with social media, I mean, we hear so much information, like not just quick tips, but things that we can kind of grasp onto and think like, yes, that must be true, and only later kind of unpeel the thing that maybe that actually doesn't fit for our philosophy. So I do really appreciate that in this book, she is upfront from the beginning that her view and philosophy and outlook on parenting and raising children is based on a humanistic approach. So the idea would be that firstly, that we are completely good inside, and that any negative behavior comes as a result of something being too hard or something like that, and that we are conditioning our children in the little years in order to how they will respond to those difficulties. So within this, she also talks a lot about like one of the chapters is very based on like your truth, like it's true for you and therefore it is true. So for me personally, this isn't something that I can get behind at all. I think that part of our job is not just making our children feel have good like thought patterns, but also making them able to function in the world. I don't like the idea of living your truth. I think that for me, it makes the world too much of a scary place because there aren't enough clear, like, this is what is true. You know what I mean? Like, there aren't enough walls. Someone that I worked with always used to describe boundaries for children as like giving a child a hug, because it's like a safe thing. I know for me personally, I really like to have clear boundaries. Instead of having to like wade through the unknown. So I don't love the concept of your truth. I don't love the concept of humanism. I don't believe that behavior is only a result of the way that children are conditioned. I think that there is also some elements of behavior that are very normative and things that we constantly need to be stopping ourselves in. There's also this kind of thing that comes up a lot in the criticism against Dr. Becky, that she's preparing children for a false reality. So there's like one example in the book where she talks about whining, and she says, you know, like, it's just an expression of a need and it needs to be met with empathy. So she talks about how she once went to a coffee shop and she was like really rushed after a busy morning. She wanted her coffee, and that's a place that she normally goes, and the machines were down or something like that. And so she whined back at the owner, like, oh, but I just need my coffee. And then she talked about like how if the owner had approached her and said like, I know it must be really frustrating for you, and you really needed your coffee right now, and you feel hurt, or something to that line. I'm definitely not saying it correctly how she said it. It sounded probably a lot better the way that she described it, but to me I felt like, well, I don't know. I just don't feel like that is a reality that most children are living in, even in childhood, like even with teachers and friends and peers. I don't know that everybody is going to approach each person with like this huge amount of empathy. And I don't know that even if we raise our children with so much empathy, that they will always consistently be empathetic towards other people. So I do wonder if this is like a false kind of reality, and if we're elevating too much the feelings of our children instead of like the functioning of the world. The other thing that comes up in terms of the criticism around this book is that it's too much for parents to do. So this idea that we are like always emotionally present and able to like approach our children with a huge amount of empathy is not a realistic thing for parents. I've read articles that have likened Dr. Becky to Janet Lansbury, and this idea that a lot of the common or popular parenting resources for parents in this generation presume that we can be completely available for our children at all points in time. So I don't know. I think that we do have to be available when they're younger. I think that part of the process is also weaning them off needing us all the time, in terms of independence. So my thoughts on the book, my review is that I enjoyed listening to it. I listened to this book, specifically the second part of the book, when we were having just a difficult week, just with a lot of external stress and things. So I really appreciated these really practical strategies on playful parenting. I don't align with the philosophy of parenting here. So the first 10 chapters for me weren't like a great fit for my family, but I do also really appreciate that the way that she expresses her philosophy is really clear, and that there's no like hidden stuff that you're left at the end of the book like wondering, why does she think that, or why is that? She's very upfront and clear about what she believes. And yeah, I found that it was definitely a nice listen, and some of those tools like all I'm saying is definitely one that we're going to continue to use in our family. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you can see the rest of the books and resources that we're going to be talking about in this series, and I will see you in the next video.